So it'll be less difficult. It'll be easier to deliver our message. It'll be more difficult, though, because the establishment will not underestimate us. They will continue to undermine us, but they will not underestimate us. So the knives will be out.
Just a few days ago, Hillary Clinton was publicly strategizing on television about how they were going to make these Democrat socialists more.
What's up, family? Man, I told y'all something was coming. I told y'all the American people were paying attention. Even the media tried to convince us we weren't, and now we got the receipts to prove it. You got one of the biggest socialist screamers on the internet, Hasan Piker, who you've seen, a man with millions of followers across Twitch and YouTube, a man who helped pump money and attention into progressive candidates all across this country, absolutely losing his mind because Wisconsin voters just told his hand-picked DSA candidate to hit the brakes. And we're talking about Francesca Hong, a Democratic Socialist of America backed candidate running for governor of Wisconsin, a state that has been a battleground for years, a state that people are watching like a hawk to see which way the political winds are blowing. And what did Wisconsin Democrats do? They looked at her platform, they looked at her history, they looked at what she actually believes, and they said, no thanks. And now Hasan Piker is on live stream crying about it, threatening Republicans, talking about how the knives are going to come out and blaming the establishment for sabotaging his girl. And here's the thing, family, the establishment didn't sabotage nothing. The voters did, and that's a beautiful thing. So we're going to break this whole thing down, and look at it from every angle, and then I'll give you my take on what this really means for the country going forward. Hit the like button, share the video, subscribe to the channel, and let's get into it, right? So let's start at the beginning. Who is Francesca Hong, and why should you care about a primary in Wisconsin that most of the country wasn't even paying attention to? So Francesca Hong is a Wisconsin state representative who decided she wanted to be governor. And she had some serious muscle behind her. She had the DSA backing her. She had the endorsement of Congresswoman Ilhan Omar. She had Rokana. She had Nina Turner. And she had Hasan Piker, who is basically the biggest socialist content creator on the planet right now, raising money for her on his stream, bringing her on his platform, using millions of followers to push her name out there. And look, I'm not here to hate on anybody or hate on somebody for trying to build a coalition. That's what politics is. You get people behind you, you build momentum, you go for it. But here's the problem. When you build a coalition around ideas that most Americans don't agree with, you're building on sand. And that's exactly what happened here. Because when voters in Wisconsin actually looked at what Francesca Hong stands for, when they pulled up her old tweets, when they saw the things she said about this country, our beautiful United States of America, they made a decision. And that decision was David Crowley. Now, David Crowley is the Milwaukee County executive. He's a mainstream Democrat. He's not a socialist. He's not calling for abolishing police or canceling Thanksgiving or any of that stuff. He beat her. He beat her even though she was leading in the polls for weeks. He beat her even though she raised all that money. He beat her even though the media was hyping her up as the future of the party. Now that right there should tell you something. And Hasan Piker he's big mad about it. And he went on scream and he said the establishment had to dust off Evers, quote unquote, and have him campaign for Crowley to beat Hung. And he's acting like it was some massive conspiracy instead of just voters making a choice. But here's the thing, family. Let's be real for a second. Tony Evers is the sitting governor. Of course, he's going to endorse the guy who's not a socialist. That's not a conspiracy. That's common sense. And this is where Piker's whole argument falls apart. He's trying to frame a primary loss as proof that the movement is so strong that the establishment had to scramble. But 300,000 votes out of a state with millions of Democrats is not proof of strength. It's proof that a loud minority can make a lot of noise online, but it doesn't win elections when real people show up to vote. Now, let's talk about the elephant in the room. And I mean that literally because this is where the whole campaign went off the rails. Francesca Hong had old social media posts where she said Thanksgiving should be canceled. She called it a colonizer holiday, quote unquote. And she said we should have it canceled. We should have canceled it back in 1621. And when people started bringing that up during the campaign, she tried to backtrack. She tried to say it was her favorite holiday, actually, like we were all just misunderstanding her. But once the cat's out of the bag, you can't put it back in. And this is where Hasan Piker really lost it because he went on screen and said, and I quote, "Oh, Francesca Hong was a bad candidate. Oh, she didn't like Thanksgiving. F them and F Thanksgiving too." Now, pause right there, family. Think about that for a second. You got a guy with millions of followers, millions of young people who look up to him, and he's cursing out Thanksgiving because a candidate lost an election. And this is the same guy who said America deserved 9/11, by the way. Let that sink in. This is who the progressive movement has chosen as one of their main voices. A guy who hates Thanksgiving, who thinks America had it coming on 9/11, who threatens to arrest Republicans with his bare hands. And they wonder why swing state voters look at these candidates and say no thanks. Here's what this actually looks like in real life, family. Imagine you're a working class person in Wisconsin. You work a blue collar job. You're trying to raise a family. You're worried about the cost of groceries and gas and keeping the lights on. And some candidate comes on TV and you find out she said Thanksgiving is a colonizer holiday that should have been canceled. How do you think that lands? It lands like she doesn't respect your way of life. It lands like she's looking down on the traditions that matter to you and your family. And that's a problem you can't fix with a better ad campaign or more money from a Twitch streamer. Scott Jennings said it best on CNN when he was talking about this whole thing. He said, when you hate Thanksgiving and you hate the 4th of July, what you're really saying is you hate some of the pillars that hold American culture together. And he's right. Don't take my word for it. Check it out.
But when you're so crazy that Bernie Sanders and AOC won't even endorse you, you're pretty far out there. I think these holiday conversations are actually valuable. She hates Thanksgiving. Today, our own K-File here at CNN uncovered the fact that over in Michigan, Abdul El Sayed wants to get rid of the 4th of July. And I think the reason these things
I think he said we should get rid of fireworks.
He was very critical of the 4th of July. I think these
but
are
I'm
windows.
just saying getting rid of fireworks is different than getting rid of the 4th of
I think
July,
I think you're downplaying
Well,
the
let's
message.
we
of the 4th
don't
of
have the
July.
quote here, so let's
But
not
I
adjudicate.
think these are windows into the souls of these anti-American radical communists.
Scott, come
If you
on.
hate Thanksgiving and you hate the 4th of July, what you're really saying is, I hate some of the pillars that undergird American culture. And how are you going to have a conversation with a voter about affordability or public safety or anything else if you're trying to get rid of Thanksgiving and the 4th of July? I mean, if I were Christmas and Easter, I wouldn't be feeling too comfortable right now.
Yes.
People win.
Well, there you have it, right? He's right. That's Scott Jennings, family. You can't ask people to trust you with their tax dollars, their kids' education, their public safety when you already told them you don't respect the country they live in. And Bill Maher even said the same thing. Bill Maher, a liberal. He was up there cracking jokes about how Francesca Hong would have to avoid Party City because she doesn't celebrate any holidays. I mean, when Bill Maher is clowning you, you know you're going too far. But don't take my word for it, family.
Okay, so this is her policy. No Christmas, no Thanksgiving, no July 4th, no Halloween, no Valentine's Day. One place you don't have to worry about running into Francesca Hong, Party City. Also, I couldn't make a character like this up, and she's running for governor of a big state, Wisconsin. She also said that she once left a restaurant because she had an anxiety attack from being around, quote, too many old white people. Well, there's an easy solution to that. Don't go to Cracker Barrel.
Here's the thing. Here's another thing that should tell you everything you need to know about this candidate. Bernie Sanders didn't endorse her. AOC didn't endorse her. Think about that for a second, family. There are the two biggest names in the progressive socialist movement. These are the people who built the squad. These are the people who have been pushing the party left for years. And when Francesca Hong came around, when the DSA candidate was running for governor of a major swing state, they stayed out of it. They didn't show up. They didn't record a video. They didn't send out a fundraising email, nothing. And you know why? Because they knew she was going to lose. They knew her baggage was too heavy. They knew that if they tied their names to her and she got crushed, it would make their whole movement look weaker. And let me tell you something. When Bernie Sanders and AOC are the ones looking at a candidate and saying, nah, that's too radical for us, you have gone way past the deep end. You're going so far left that your own team is letting you drown. And that's exactly what happened. Hong led in the polls for weeks. She had the energy. She had the money. She had the online hype machine behind her. And she still lost by roughly 3,000 votes. All right, family? 39.8% to 39.4%. Right? That's a margin you can measure with your fingers. And this is where I want you to get into some real informative information here. Because a lot of people on the left, they look at a close loss like that and they see the movement is growing. We almost had it. But that's not how elections work. Close only counts in horseshoes, and hand grenades. When you have every advantage, when the media is soft peddling your radical positions, when you got millions of dollars in online fundraising and you still can't close the deal, that's not a sign of strength. That's a sign that your ceiling is lower than you thought. Right? And when you look at that, right? Just showing you guys, right? With Gallup, 39% of Americans view socialism positively, 57% view it negatively. And let's talk about Hasan Piker, because he actually said what he said after the loss, because this is where it gets really interesting. He went on live stream right after the results came in, and he said, and I'm quoting from the reports here, "It would be more difficult, though, because the establishment will not underestimate us. They will continue to undermine us, but they will not underestimate us. So the knives will be out," right? You heard it in the first clip. The knives will be out now. Tell me something, family. When you hear a political commentator say the knives are going to come out, what do you think that means? It sounds like a threat. It sounds like somebody getting ready to fight dirty, and that's exactly what it is. Piker is telling his audience that the Democratic establishment is the enemy, that they sabotage his candidate, and that the only way forward is to get more aggressive. But here's the problem with that logic. The establishment didn't do anything except support the candidate who wasn't calling Thanksgiving a colonizer holiday. That's not sabotage, that's self-preservation. The Democratic Party, even the mainstream part of it, knows that if they nominate somebody who openly hates American traditions, they're going to lose in November for the midterm. So they back the safer option, and Piker is losing his mind because he can't understand why regular voters don't want to join his revolution. He said it in that same scream. Don't get discouraged because the media will do everything in its power to try to discourage. He's telling his followers that the only reason Hung lost is because the media and the establishment teamed up against her. Not because voters made a free choice, not because her ideas are unpopular, but because the big bad system is rigged against them. And that's a dangerous message to send to millions of young people. And it teaches them that when you lose, it's never your fault. It's always somebody else's fault. It's the media. It's the establishment. It's the system. And you know what? That's the exact same mentality that led to January 6th from the other side, right? That's what they say. They'll sit there and make it as though it was Trump cause of January 6th. But Trump never incited violence. He said, go down there and make your voices be heard peacefully. Paid individuals started it, just like you see a lot of paid protesting that's already lined up and organized with picket signs and things on it, saying our president is Hitler and a dictator and king. Coincidentally. You're convincing people that elections only count when your side wins. You're undermining democracy itself. And the irony is Piker and his followers would scream about election denial from conservatives. But here they are doing the same exact thing from the left. Right? So I want you guys to check this out as I showed you the data.
This is the measure for crazy for people like AOC and Bernie Sanders, who, Bernie certainly was all in with Graham Plattner. But Francesca Hung, it wasn't just a lack of endorsements. It's that people in Wisconsin, this is a very interesting state politically. And, people are used to the bombardment of political ads. And she never broke through because she was very easy to paint into a progressive corner. But then when she was confronted with some of her past statements, she's not a good political actor. She wasn't good at saying, yeah, that was a silly thing that I said in the heat of the moment. Boy, do I not believe that. And she was not able to divorce herself from some of the most damning statements, particularly on Thanksgiving. So it's not a mandate for the DSA. It's also not a mandate for the Democrat Party, because they have also not run the kind of candidates that break through to independent voters and people who have been completely disturbed by both parties.
There you have it, family. And then Hasan Piker took it even further, because this is a man who doesn't know when to calm down. He said on his screen, and I quote directly from the Washington Examiner, "I will personally promise you that I'm going to arrest Tom Tiffany with my bare hands." Now, Tom Tiffany is the Republican candidate for a governor in Wisconsin. He's a congressman who represents the northern part of the state, and Piker is threatening to arrest him with his bare hands on a live stream watched by hundreds of thousands of people. Now, ask yourself this, family. If a conservative commentator said he was going to arrest a Democratic politician with his bare hands, what would happen? There would be an FBI investigation. There would be demands for the platform to ban him. There would be news stories for weeks. But because it's Hasan Piker, because he's on the left, because he's one of their guys, it barely gets mentioned. The double standard is unbelievable. And the RNC national spokesperson, Natalie Becerra, was right when she called him out. She said Piker is a Hamas-hugging radical with a long history of threatening rape and violence against those who disagrees with. Quote, and that's not my words. That's from the Republican National Committee. And she's right. This is not a man who should be taken seriously as a political commentator. This is a man who is radicalizing young people, feeding them conspiracy theories and threatening violence against the people he disagrees with. And yet the Democratic Party keeps cozying up to him, and they keep letting our candidates go on his scream, and they keep taking his money and his endorsements, and because they need his audience, and they need those young voters who don't watch cable news and are willing to sell out basic decency to get them. And let's zoom out for a second, family, and look at the bigger picture here, because this is bigger than one candidate losing the primary in Wisconsin. This is about a fundamental disconnect between the activist class and the actual American voter. You got people on the internet, people with huge followings, people who spend all day in echo chambers where everyone agrees with them, and they genuinely believe that America is ready for socialism. They genuinely believe that if they could just get their message out there, if they can get enough young people to show up, they can transform the country. But an election happens and real people show up, not just the activists, not just the people in the chat. And those real people look at the candidate and say no. And that has happened over and over again. Think about it, family. How many times have we seen the media and the online left hype up a candidate, call them the future of the party, raise millions of dollars, and then watch them lose to a moderate? It happened in 2020 with Bernie. It happened in 2022 with some of the squad members who barely held on to their seats. It happened in 2024 when the party tried to push Biden out, and they lost anyway. And now it's happening in 2026 with Hong. The pattern is clear. Socialism posed great on Twitter and Twitch. It posed terrible, as I bring up the information, it posed terrible in real life. And the reason is simple. Most Americans don't want to tear down the system. They want to fix it. They want lower prices, safer neighborhoods, better schools, and a government that doesn't waste their money. But they don't want to cancel Thanksgiving. They don't want to abolish the 4th of July. They don't want to defund the police. They don't want open borders. And when a candidate comes along with who represents all those things, they get rejected. Even in a Democratic primary in a blue state. That's what happened here. Wisconsin voters, even Democratic voters, looked at Francesca Hong and said, we don't want that. And David Crowley, the establishment guy, the safe choice, he won. Right? And now I got to touch on this real quick because it's just too juicy to ignore. The Wisconsin primary wasn't canceled until early Wednesday morning because a Milwaukee election official said there was a human error, quote unquote. 5 of 9 memory sticks delivered to the Milwaukee County Courthouse had audit logs instead of election results because an election worker pushed the wrong button. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say there was anything nefarious going on, but I will say this. After everything we've seen in the last few years with election integrity, these kind of errors don't inspire a lot of confidence. And the fact that it happened in Milwaukee County, the most Democratic county in the state, during a primary where the socialist candidate was losing, just interesting, the timing. That's all I'm going to say. You can draw your own conclusions. I'll tell you this much. If the roles were reversed and the error helped the Republican candidate, there will be hearings. There will be investigations. There will be wall-to-wall coverage on MSNBC, now known as MS Now, and CNN. But because it's a Democratic primary, because it's an error that might have delayed the counting of votes that went against the socialist candidate, nobody cares. And that's a problem. Either we care about election integrity all the time, or we don't care about it at all. And you can't only care about it when your side loses. So what are we learning from all of this, family? What's the takeaway? This is where I want to really lock in because there's a lesson that goes way beyond politics. The first thing we learn is that the loudest voice in the room is not always the right one. Hasan Piker has millions of followers. He can raise hundreds of thousands of dollars with a single scream. He can get clips played on every news network. He can shape the conversation online. But when voters walk in the booth and pull the curtain shut, his influence ends. And that's a beautiful thing. That's how democracy is supposed to work. That's how democracy is supposed to work. Again, I reiterate. Because the second thing we learn is that actions have consequences. Francesca Hong said those things about Thanksgiving. She put them out there on social media. She was proud of them at the time. And when she tried to run for higher office, those words came back to haunt her. That's not a conspiracy. That's accountability. And it applies to all of us. What you say tomorrow matters. What you say today matters tomorrow. What you post online can follow you for the rest of your life. So think before you type. The third thing we learn is that political movements that don't reflect the values of regular people will eventually hit a wall. You can build a big online following. You can get all the endorsements. You can raise all the money. But if your ideas are out of step with everyday Americans believe, you will lose. And that's because most Americans are not radicals. They're not socialists. They don't hate our country. They want to see it improve, but they want to build on what's already here, not tear it down and start over. And the fourth thing is this. Don't let anybody gaslight you into thinking losing is winning. When the election results came in and Hung lost, Piker tried to spin it as a victory. He pointed to her 300,000 votes and said, look how strong we are. But 300,000 votes in a state with 6 million people is not a mandate. It's not a movement. It's a faction. And when you look at it, that don't win general elections. And that's the lesson for all of us. But be honest about where you stand. Be honest about where your strengths and your weaknesses. Don't make excuses. Don't blame the system. Look at the results. Learn from them and adjust. That's how you actually grow. Now, and I want to say something to the people who are watching this and maybe feel conflicted. Maybe you're somebody who leans left, but you're not a socialist. Maybe you voted for Biden or Harris in the past. Maybe you think I'm being too hard on Hasan Piker. I hear you. I really do, because here's the thing. I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'm here to show you what happened and let you decide. And the facts are clear. A socialist candidate in Wisconsin lost. The guy who was her biggest supporter had a very public meltdown. And the reason she lost is because voters in the swing state looked at her record and her statements and said, no, that's not spin. That's not interpretation. That's what happened. If you're a Democrat who doesn't want your party to be taken over by socialists, you should actually be happy about this result, because it proves that the party still has a center. It proves that the majority of Democratic voters are not ready to embrace the far left agenda. And that's a good thing for the country, because a two-party system only works when both parties are operating within the bounds of reason. When one party goes fully radical, the whole system gets thrown off balance. So David Crowley winning this primary is not just a loss for socialists, it's a win for people who believe in stable, functioning political institutions. And I say that as a conservative. I would rather run against a mainstream Democrat than a socialist any day of the week. Let me know if you disagree or not. We're just having a productive conversation. Because mainstream Democrats, I disagree with them on policy, but I don't question whether they love their country. With the DSA crowd, I'm not really sure. At the end of the day, this comes down to one simple truth. America is not a socialist country. And every time the left tries to pretend otherwise, the voters remind them. It happened in 2020 when Bernie lost. It happened in the midterms when the red wave didn't show up, but the socialist candidates still underperformed. It happened in 2024. And now it's happening again in 2026. The pattern doesn't change. The activists get excited. The media hypes them up. The money pours in, and then the voters say no. And every time it happens, the left blames the establishment, blames the media, blames the system, instead of looking in the mirror and asking themselves a hard question. Maybe the problem isn't the establishment. Maybe the problem is your ideas. Maybe the problem is that telling people Thanksgiving is a colonizer holiday doesn't win you any votes in Wisconsin. Maybe the problem is that threatening to arrest Republicans with your bare hands makes you look unhinged. Maybe the problem is that your whole worldview is built on a foundation most Americans reject. And that's the honest truth. You can have all the followers in the world. You can have all the hype. You can have all the energy. But if you don't have the ideas that resonate with regular people, you will lose every single time. And that's not a bug in the system. That's a feature. Now, as I wrap this up, I want to leave you with something to really think about. The Bible has a lot to say about pride and about humbling yourself before you get humbled by circumstances. And the verse that comes to mind for this situation is Proverbs chapter 16, verse 18. It says, pride goeth before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. And that's exactly what we saw here. Hasan Piker was walking around acting like his candidate was inevitable. He was talking about how the establishment had to scramble, and he was threatening opponents. He was acting like the movement was too strong to stop. And then the voters showed up and humbled him 3,000 votes. That's all it took. That's the difference between victory and a meltdown live stream. And the reason I bring up this scripture is not to mock Piker at all or celebrate his loss. Of course not. It's to remind all of us that pride is a dangerous thing. When you start believing your own hype, when you start thinking you can't lose, when you start dismissing everyone who disagrees with you as corrupt or stupid, you're setting yourself up for a fall. It doesn't matter if you're on the left or on the right. It doesn't matter if you're a screamer or a politician or just a regular person. Pride will get you every time, and the antidote to pride is humility. It's the ability to look at a loss and say, what could I have done differently? It's the ability to look at an opponent and say, they beat me fair and square. It's the ability to look at yourself honestly and admit when you're wrong. And that's something that all of us, myself included, need to work on every single day. And for those who aren't spiritual, let me give you the same lesson in plain English. Here's what this teaches us about life. Nobody is too big to lose. You can have all the money, all the followers, all the momentum in the world, and still get stopped by people who simply disagree with you. And that's actually a good thing. It means the system works. It means your voice matters. And it means that no matter how powerful somebody seems, they still have to convince you to go along with them. They can't just force it. And the practical takeaway for your own life is this: stay humble, stay grounded, never assume you already won before the results are in. And when you do lose, because we all lose sometimes, don't blame everybody else. Take an honest look at what happened, learn the lesson, and come back stronger. That's how you grow. That's how you improve. That's how you win in the long run. Blaming the refs might feel good in the moment, but it doesn't make you better. Let me ask you this, family. After watching all of this unfold, what's your take? Do you think Wisconsin voters sent a clear message that socialism is dead in swing states? Or do you think the DSA, the Democratic Socialists of America, will come back stronger next time? Let me know in the comments. I read every single one. Hit the like button if this breakdown made sense to you. Share the video with somebody who needs to hear this truth. Subscribe to the channel, turn on post notifications so you never miss a breakdown. And remember, family, no matter what's happening in the world around us, keep your head up, keep your faith strong, and keep speaking the truth in love. Because at the end of the day, that's all any of us can do. Proverbs chapter 16, verse 18. Pride goeth before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. Don't be like Hasan Piker, family. Stay humble, stay grounded. And always remember that the vote of a single citizen is more powerful than any streamer, any politician, or any movement that forgets who they work for. Spread that peace, love, and positivity. Let the love supersede the hate, family. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.